Benchmarking as an innovative strategy. Benchmarking is something that is being done commonly in organizations, and when you think about benchmarking, you're thinking about what's going on in the other organization that might be innovative that you might be able to use. So we're going to look at benchmarking and how it works and how it might be part of an innovative strategy. So the strategic potential of benchmarking is really captured in books like this. Benchmarking for Best Practices. It's basically a manufacturing commercial book that really looks at the benchmarking process from an engineering perspective and how the engineering process and benchmarking things in the engineering process from other firms can fit into a business strategy. So we're going to take that point of view and see what we can do with it. So you say, well, why should we benchmark? Well, benchmarking is a common business practice. Competitors out there are readily available. I mean, everybody is competing against somebody. And sometimes what you find is that those competitors are doing something better than you're doing. And you want to know how you can do what you're doing better. And so because their competitors are readily available, benchmarking opportunities are readily available. And so what happens when you begin looking at other organizations, you begin to discover that there are innovative practices that they're doing, innovative approaches that they're doing, and you're continually discovering those. And so that's instead of inventing those ideas in-house and spending a lot of energy doing it, benchmarking, or stealing ideas, if you will, is a way of actually capturing innovative opportunity. And so adopting innovative approaches from others is actually easier and less costly than internal development or problem solving. So if you can look at what other people are doing, how they're doing it, and if they're doing it well, and if you've got a process for doing that benchmarking, then you're likely to save money and get a range of innovation opportunities. So let's look at a couple of different types of benchmarking. There's what we would call internal benchmarking, things that would improve the way in which an organization operates internally, and external benchmarking, where you're looking at ways in which other organizations reach the marketplace. And so there's always this kind of dichotomy between internal things that are opportunities and external things that are opportunities and ways in which you can get at them. And internal and external really benchmarking, they look at products, they look at things that are processes, they look at strategies. And so, for somebody who is looking for ways to improve their strategy, they might do a strategy benchmarking exercise. So you can look at any one of these three, and you can look at them from an internal or an external perspective. Now this diagram is a way in which you can look at the territory of benchmarking, the territory of benchmarking opportunities. So if you look on the lower axis, you see a range of practices, and maybe the range are from practices that are low payoff on the left-hand side to high payoff on the right-hand side. And on the vertical axis, you could look at benchmarking of activities that will produce low performance improvement on the left-hand side, or on the bottom, and then high performance improvement toward the top. And so it's a classic matrix here. And so let's look at each one of these little territories here. The yellow territory is an area where we would say is rich in opportunity for finding benchmarks, but they maybe aren't doing much for performance, but they're readily available practices. And so that's low-hanging fruit, and that's good. It's easy, it's accessible. If we look above that in the pink category, where we call those vulnerable benchmarking categories, where there's high performance, but the practices are not clearly understood. And so the definitions of how these things are done are not as easy to understand. And so you can't, from the outside, look at what a firm is doing and try and benchmark something that you don't understand very well. And that's the vulnerable category. On the lower right, in the light blue, we have what we would call promising category. Those are practices that are fairly well understood, easily understood, highly understood, and maybe don't necessarily provide a lot of performance, but they are readily understood, and then they're easy to implement. And so if we move to the upper right-hand corner, where we have a couple of categories. One is what we would call contenders. This is where you would move from, let's say, the low-hanging fruit on the lower left to the, let's say, the more valuable high-hanging fruit on the right, upper right. And so contenders are examples of benchmarked activities that would be really good if you could incorporate them into your firm's strategies and operations. And in the far corner of that contender category is what we would call world-class activities, world-class opportunities for benchmarking. World-class activities like maybe Apple's marketing or Walmart's logistics process. Those are world-class things that happen in organizations. And every firm, not every firm, but every good firm, every highly innovative firm has some world-class activity that could be benchmarked. And so what you want to do is examine what those activities are and see whether they're applicable or whether they can be adapted to your firm. So here is a diagram that really is what we would call a benchmarking opportunity pyramid. And it starts at the bottom with really comparing the present performance of your organization against its past performance, and to see whether there's something that you can do there. And those are really low performance opportunities. The second category above that is where you compare with customers' expectations and perceptions with your performance. And those have, we would call moderate performance opportunity improvement. And then you go to the next level where you're comparing with the best competitors out there. And so, the first two categories, you can do user surveys, you can do internal surveys, you can begin to look in the mirror at yourself and begin to see how your organization is running and how well it's running. And yes, you can find ways to look for innovative improvements, but you're not really looking at anybody else. You're looking at yourself. And that's not bad, but it's not as good as looking at that third category up there, comparing what you do with the best competitors in your field. And that is one of the classic benchmarking target areas. And then finally, you go to the top, and it's really where there's a big performance gap between what you're doing and what, let's say, the best competitor out there, the best in class, the world-class competitor would be. And so that's the ultimate performance that you might seek. But that may not be within the range. And so somewhere, often, the pragmatic approach to benchmarking is to go somewhere between the top category and the next category down. So this is a way of thinking about a choice about what it is that you want to go out and benchmark. It's highly likely that in those lower two categories you would not find much that would be innovative that you could apply from one part of your firm to the other, or let's say from ordinary competitors. But if you look at better competitors, people who are better than you, organizations that are better than you, then you're going to find that they're doing things better. And there are opportunities for you to incorporate an innovative idea and benchmark an innovative idea from them. So the benchmarking process is fairly straightforward. This is a simplified version of it, but it's pretty straightforward. So you decide what it is that you want to benchmark. You start with maybe a problem inventory, and you figure out that here's an area where we need to improve or where we could improve. And then you understand how well you're doing. And you make some kind of a plan about how you're going to benchmark. And then you go ahead and study how other people operate, how other people function, and understand what the practices are that other competitors are doing. You benchmark those. And then you learn from the data that you've collected. And then you apply that data in ways in which you translate your findings to what it is that you can apply, what it is that you benchmarked from other firms and other organizations that you can apply to your own firm and your own firm's practices. So one of the first stages is to identify and measure what's going on. You understand in-house performance, you identify your needed improvements, and you establish benchmark goals. Fairly straightforward, but what it is, it's a very deliberate step and a very important step because it sets the benchmark and the premise for how you want to actually improve. Then there is a benchmarking search where you're out looking at best-in-class performers or best-in-class competitors, and you understand how they perform, and you understand why they perform the way they do. And then you, out of that, really are identifying what it is that they're doing better, and how might that be an innovation opportunity for how your firm might operate. And then you compare the benchmarks that you find to what you're actually doing. And you identify functional differences, value differences, and then you establish what needs to change. And then you evaluate, the obvious investment aspect of it, the cost benefit of that change. And so then you make some decision to actually apply the benchmark. And the way in which the benchmark gets applied, it gets applied as an innovation. So this is where we come back to the idea that benchmarking is a way in which you can incorporate innovative ideas inside your organization. You can grow them inside, yes, but you can also find them elsewhere. And so you translate the benchmark opportunity from its source, where you've looked at it and you saw how successful it might be, and then you fit it into your existing process or your existing operation or your existing strategy. And then you monitor any improvement changes and the value that it creates. So the benefits of benchmarking are that it leads to new innovation opportunities. And so you can have an internal research and development activity that is kind of a think tank of innovative ideas, and you can also look to benchmark what other people are doing. So benchmarking does benefit that way. It leads you to new innovation opportunities. And by doing benchmarking, what you do internally in your organization is you create a culture that's open to new ideas. People are seeing new ways, new approaches, different approaches of how things get done. And you create a culture that's open to adjusting and responding to innovative implementation. Benchmarking also does tend to test the viability of your current operation. So it's an evaluation of how well you're doing. And it serves as a catalyst for learning. So you're not only learning about what you're doing and looking in the mirror, but you're also looking at other operations. And by looking at those other operations, what you find is there's somebody's doing something better than you are. And it creates new performance targets for your organization, and it enlarges the external business view of your organization. So in summary, you could think of benchmarking as one more strategy tool for innovation. It can be readily done without major in-house training or consulting help. It's where your own people can do it, and it has in-house benefits. And the benchmarking process helps create receptivity to additional innovative ideas.